Well, hello to everybody. Um, wow, this is a day, isn't it? Thursday, the what, 5th? Is it Thursday the 5th? I think New Year's is a few days ago, so that's got to be pretty close, ain't it? Thursday the 5th. Yeah, that just shows how much I pay attention, doesn't it? So I just want to kind of hang out with everybody today. I seen something really interesting the other day that I want to kind of talk on, and we've talked about some stuff before about a lot of the assumptions that are made. Let's just say that sometimes people like to think certain things, or they're so certain because they've heard something so many times. They're certain that that's the law and that's the fact and yada, 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 whatever. But we're getting into that in a minute. First, I want to give everybody a few minutes to come in. I want to say hi to everybody. Art, how are you? Miss Lisa, how are you? Miss Kelly. There's the hall pass, Tom. Hope you're educating those children well today, sir. When you get a chance to stop in, I know I appreciate that. Scumdogs in the chat. Miss Mandy, hello. Baby doll Ayrton. There's me. Oh, wait a minute. I shouldn't say hi to Leducator. He's a pig tyrant. But anyway, so and I'll just give everybody kind of a little bit of time. Let me tell you how my day has started, folks. Okay. So I just have to throw this out there. So my wife and I go to the store this morning, and while we're there, she says, "Oh, I got a package coming today." Oh, okay. No, that sounds good, right? So I get here, and we get back, and we pull in, and she says, "Oh, there's a package on the porch." Okay, awesome. Well, I'm pleased to announce to everybody that I got my monthly supply of candle wax. Yeah. Yeah. Now let's think about that for a minute. I pay once again for candle wax, and she's thrilled over it. Like she's like, "Oh my gosh, I got my Scentsy, yada 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 yada," and I'm going, isn't that just candle wax? And she's like, "Oh no, but it's vanilla rainbow, yada yada yada, blah blah blah." And I'm like, "Yeah, that sounds like something special." So, hey, Kick, how are you, sir? Kick, send you a link if you're free, buddy. I'd love to have you on the panel. I'm actually kind of talking about there's Blue Bear, my brother. But Blue Bear, you know what? here's the irony of the wax. Okay, it's burnt, melted candle wax that you put back in a thing that's called a Scentsy burner, and it melts it again, and then it smells. And yes, kick rocks in the chat, please, everybody. Give me a hashtag kick rocks. Yeah, that's really what that's what it does. You just melt it again, and it smells. Now think about that for a minute. And we pay money for this, guys. We pay money. So yeah, and you know, it's like I complain about Starbucks a lot of times because it's like I don't agree with their with their hang on just a second, Kick. And I'm just gonna put Kick, I'm gonna put it in the chat here. You just follow the link, sir. I think I got it here. Let me see. Okay, Kick, it's in the chat if you want to follow that link, buddy. So I complain about Starbucks. I'm gonna be the first one to admit that I complain about Starbucks, and not that I don't enjoy their product. I do. I think they have a good product. I don't agree with their politics. Lisa, I never answer how many guns I have. I have plenty, and plenty, not enough. I always want more. But nevertheless, here's where I stand on Starbucks. I love their product per se, but I do not agree with their politics. I think if I'm not mistaken, somebody in the chat can correct me. Maybe a few years ago when all that Ferguson, Missouri stuff was going on, I think they spoke out kind of being anti-police, which kind of bothered me a little bit. Kick, how are you, sir?
Hey, good morning, afternoon, whatever you're celebrating. How's it going?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I guess I'm kind of right in the middle, buddy. Yeah. Technically.
I mean, it's almost like noon, I guess.
Yeah, It's kind of one of those things where I guess you could say morning depending on how late you sleep.
Right.
So, but anyway, so I don't agree with her. I don't agree with Starbucks politics. I think they were kind of anti-police at one time, as I recall. I read something that kind of led me to believe that, and I know they are very anti-2A in my experience. And you guys know, obviously, I'm a strong 2A guy. Um, I just personally think that anytime that we have the right to, and what's sad about this kick is even though I don't agree with their politics necessarily, they still get my money because they get it from life. So I can't even boycott an organization that I don't necessarily approve of because they're getting my money from my wife anyway, right? So, but nevertheless, so I pay Starbucks and candle wax on a regular basis. So just keep that in mind. And if you ever feel bad about yourself, just know that old Captain Chad boy, he's working overtime today so he can buy some more Starbucks and candle wax.
My wife got hooked on that Scentsy stuff too. We got some of that stuff in the house, but instead of burners, one of the cool things that we do is we take a little bit of aluminum foil and we got this small frying pan at the store, and we just line it with the aluminum and we drop one of the wax melts in there and set it on the back burner of the stove on low.
Wow. Okay. Well, just so you know, Mrs. Legicator is never going to go for that kick because you have to have little themed, little weird Cincy burner things with lights in them around the house that are like, I mean, you never know. You may have a unicorn at one point or something. It's got to be something, bud. You have to pay way too much for that too.
Yeah, no. When I saw how hard it was to get those light bulbs, I'm like, honey, we got to stop. We got to stop.
What's funny is she's a consultant or whatever, where she sells it and stuff. And she was selling it there for a while, and it did, she made a few dollars here and there, which was fun for her. So, I mean, I'm going to support it. She enjoys it. But she goes all about, going to be, oh, well, we're going to sell this product or whatever. Well, then it costs like X amount of dollars a month. I don't know. Let's just say $50 a month. And I may or may not be wrong because I don't know. But it costs this much, and then she sells this much, and she makes, let's just say, another $100 a month or whatever. And then I catch myself spending $120 a month in Cincy, and I'm going, boy, they really got this figured out, don't they?
Yeah. Have you ever watched Illuminati? She covers like the multi-level marketing and stuff, and Cincy is technically multi-level marketing.
Sure.
You can get some of the same stuff over at like Kroger or
absolutely
Walmart. But when it comes to the waxes, like as long as you're not one of the consultants, the main money comes from all the burners. That's really what it is.
Really?
Yeah, so that's where all the money comes from.
Wow. Okay. Well, Kick, we got another guest here. We're going to add Blue Bear here. Blue Bear, how are you, sir?
Blue Bear.
I had to get ready for work so I could jump on here with you. Let me turn my phone off because I was listening on my phone.
Well, just for the record, folks, that means Blue Bear is going to go out and tyrant somebody. Dang. He's going to go out and violate somebody's poor rights. That's all they're trying to do is go down and cause some trouble. He goes and interrupts it.
Oh, damn. And here I was hoping you were going to violate my lefts.
Or your wrongs.
Kick, that may be coming soon. I'll come violate your left for you.
You know what? No.
you might want to take a rank on that, Kick. I'm just saying. But so anyway, since we got a few in here today, and I'm not doing this real long today because I know it's kind of middle of the day and it's not really the normal thing. Hall Pass says I smell bacon tyrants.
Good morning, Miss Mandy.
Miss
Good morning, Mandy.
Good for Starbucks, someone says, because they don't want cops around or they don't want guns around. Which one? I'm just curious. Wow. Okay. So, and you guys may or may not, and I'm not sure if either one of you have ever spoke about this on your channel, and I'm probably covering something that somebody has before, and I apologize for that. But how many times do we see on a regular basis these guys that are out 1A fronting at times? I think there's a difference in practicing and exercising your First Amendment rights and then just being out starting trouble. And that's just my opinion. But How many times we see these guys that are out there and they cause an issue, they cause a stir, and then the first thing they say is something along the lines of, "I want your badge, your name and badge number. I demand it right now." It happens all the time. And then you even hear something followed up with, "There's a federal law that says you have to give me your name and badge number." I've heard that multiple times. I've heard that literally in the commission of my own duties. And the truth is, how many people in the chat really believe that's true? Let's get a 1 in the chat if you think that that's actually a true thing, or 2 in the chat if you know that's nonsense. Because I can tell you this, it wasn't just recently, I believe our favorite little short baby man had actually made that assumption about a police officer, or I'm assuming it was a police officer, and said something about the old federal law of 2020 or so on and so forth. Well, let's just clarify that. And Fab Daddy, there is policies within certain departments. I cannot speak on every department. And you're right. I'm sure there are a lot of policies within the country that actually say, "Hey, with our agency, we're absolutely going to say you have to provide that." But see, here's where people are mistaken. Most uniformed officers provide that on their uniform. It's already there. On my uniform, I have CQ and my badge. Now, I don't have a badge number because I'm a captain. It has star on my badge, and I don't have a badge number. But my unit number is supplied if they ask for it, not because I have to, but because I feel it my obligation to supply it to the public. Not because I have to. So to clarify that, I'm going to read here in a minute a little bit of about this federal law. I guess the main thing is I want to clarify the difference in the assumptions that people have, and I want to break down the differences in how that applies to federal law and obviously at the local levels as well. And Fab Daddy, I really don't know. I don't know why they hide information. I assume that they probably, if they're hiding it, it's probably because they're kind of being approached by an asshole and they're just kind of trying to be an asshole back, just walking off when they say, "Give me your name," and they just kind of say, "Screw you." Because you got to remember, I mean, if you're asking for somebody for something that's kind of beyond what they have to give you, and you're treating them poorly, it's kind of human nature to maybe not give them exactly what they demand. So, and I have seen that many times. These guys get on there and say, "You have to give it to me. You have to give it to me." Well, no, really don't. Sorry. It is on my uniform. It does say CQ, or like I said, with my badge, it's just, I'm a captain. So, but I actually, I used to have a patch. Kick, you may get out of this. I used to have a patch that actually said Iron Man that I put on my uniform. And I wore that on my nameplate for a while, just because I wanted people to question me and be like, "What's your name?" "Well, my name's Chad." "Why is it on your vest?" "Well, if it was on my vest, you have to ask me." Well, and then it kind of just immediately kills it, right? And Sovereign, my shoe size is actually 12. I think that's the next thing we need to put in there, guys. What do you think, that Blue? You think maybe we should pass a law that says you have to supply your name, badge number, and shoe size, and whatever you had for breakfast that morning?
I wouldn't be able to do that because I can't remember what I did like 30 minutes ago. There's just so much going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
How about they bend over and they figure out my shoe size?
Here's one idea. Just one idea.
I mean, the human face is not a unit of measurement yet.
I'm not talking about the face.
I think he was talking about maybe supplying it rectally.
Yes.
Oh, Lord. So
why don't you tell me how big my shoe is?
Yeah, exactly. Can you tell me the Third Amendment? No, but I can tell you the third thing I done today. And I've teetered a few times of just having fun, and I have done this occasionally in the past. When I've just been on certain calls and these guys they want conflict immediately. That's their entire agenda. So, I'll just kind of be like, well, as soon as they start with, do you even know the law? And I'll be like, well, not really. This is only my second day. And yesterday they just had me reading over policies. I don't really know what's going on. And the look on these people's faces, because they think that I'm being serious. And it's like, oh, that's so funny. Well, then why'd you ask me? Or no, why don't you tell me what the law is, counselor? Because evidently you're the expert on it, right? So, but was it? And maybe somebody can clarify. I seen something this morning, and I think it was on. Gosh, I can't remember what channel it was, and it was a clip of Maria, and she was literally confronting somebody. I'm assuming it was an officer of some sort that was in plain clothes, and kept saying, "Are you familiar with the Law Enforcement Information Act of 2020 and blah, 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 blah." And I'm thinking to myself, wow, here he is again, completely out of context. He has no clue what he's talking about. I mean, it amazes me because he does not pay attention to anything that's going. He's literally referring to a federal law, and maybe that was a federal officer, but I'm going to show you here in a minute why that doesn't even matter, because it doesn't apply to just anybody. There's certain officers and certain situations in which that applies to. And I don't think he gets that.
It's the standard watering down to a narrative. I mean, just a quick Google of the words that he used to describe it is literally just standard FOIA. That's all it is. It's FOIA, and it has nothing to do with name and badge number when you're there on a stop or a investigation. But like you said earlier, identifying from an officer's perspective is really based municipally. It's not a federal requirement. There's no law.
Sure.
And a lot of people are concerned about that because, when you look back to a lot of the rioting that took place in many of the cities, officers were being targeted because officer information is public information.
Absolutely.
And so now you've got, ne'er-do-wells showing up at the homes of these police officers in the middle of the night. I mean, I can understand why they wouldn't want to identify themselves if they're in an area with, a whole bunch of riots going on. It makes perfect sense at that time.
Well, Kick, and to piggyback off that, I know in my state, some of that information is redacted purposely by law. Addresses, phone numbers, personal information as far as like driver's license number, social security number, date of birth. All that information is redacted by state law for officer safety. So they can get other information that is public, but not personal information.
And though that may be true, in the age of technology, people are really quick to try and find ways to identify those.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's unfortunate that even just giving your name and badge number, having your picture on that website, or having your picture taken by somebody can lead to a whole bunch of very easy searches on the internet and pull that up just so that way they can continue the harassment or actually harm somebody. So, it's a frustrating thing because, yeah, I would like to know who I'm talking to. It's just a sign of kindness. Like,
sure,
Blue Bear, if you stopped me, I would say, "I'm sorry, officer, what's your name?" And that way we could just carry a conversation like decent human beings.
Well, see, and the way I do my stops is when I approach the car, I say, "I am so-and-so from such and such. The reason I stopped you is..."
Yeah. Well, that's
I need to see your driver's license, registration, proof of insurance. And that's just being cordial with somebody, in my opinion.
Hello, Queen Bee. Thank you for joining. Thank you for becoming a member. Real fast, I'll tell you something that I do too. When I go up, the very first thing that I'll say is, "Hello, my name is Captain Gu. I'm with the City of Ironton Police Department. The reason why I stopped you today is blah, 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 blah. Do you have your driver's license, registration, proof of insurance with you, please?" And that's pretty much a repeat of every single thing that's almost every single time. Okay. And it's not to say that that there's not other ways to do it right. That's just the way that I do it to remember, pretty simply. And like you were saying, Kick, a lot of it too is, and that's what I want to touch on too, is two different things you brought up that I want to touch on. The first thing I'll address is when you said, in a cordial conversation, he can come up to me at any time in the commission of my duty or at the gas station any time and speak to me politely. And I'd be more than happy to say, hey, yeah, my name's Chad, whatever, blah, 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 whatever. And the same thing on duty. When I speak to somebody and I'm going to identify myself with respect and carry on a mutual conversation. When it becomes more of an agenda of an attack and they insist it, that's when I may refer to the fact of, well, my name is on my chest. And generally speaking, I personally, and what you were talking about is, when somebody was like in the midst of those riots or whatever, and they're saying, well, you can't, you have to tell me your name, badge number. Well, I don't think it's a necessity for you to know that right here. There's so much going on. You want to know my name and badge number, then by all means, get it off the report that I'll be filing. So, it's necessarily something you're going to need right here. And that's just the way that I feel about it. I don't know, Blue, if you kind of feel the same way or not. I've never really talked to you about that, but.
Well, here's my thing. You're going to get the level of respect that you give me. I'm going to start off with it. And I'm going to give you every bit of respect that I have.
I agree.
Until you change the game. If I walk up to your car and you say, well, what the F do you want? Well, okay. Would you like to start again?
Mm-hmm.
I try to give everybody a chance because you don't know what kind of day they're having.
I agree.
And I've actually done that. I've walked up to somebody's car and they just pop off at the mouth, and I look at them.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's try this again. This is who I am. This is why I'm stopping you. This is why I'm here. So let's try this again. And I try to give them that opportunity, but if they want to keep progressing the conversation, then I may have to step up my tone a little bit.
Well, and I'll tell you
conversation back down.
And I'll tell you something that I try to keep in mind, Blue, and I'm sure you probably do too, is the reality is nobody that ever has really truly ever has a interaction with police is usually not a positive thing. Either something terrible's happened and they've had to call the police and we've come to their house and they're in a moment of despair of some sort, or they just got stopped in a traffic stop. Either way, it's probably not a great day. So I try to take that into consideration and say, look, I understand nobody wants to get stopped by police, but let me get through this, talk about it, and we'll see what our options are, right? And that's kind of generally been my practice, at least, of when I actually done traffic stops and stuff, was because I wanted to make sure that I'm doing them the best way that I can, as friendly as I can, to make sure that that we can have a good interaction, if that makes sense.
Or sometimes I'll ask them, do you know why I stopped you? And they'll say, yeah, I was going too fast, or yeah, I didn't stop at the stop sign. I actually had one tell me, yeah, because I'm stupid. And I'm like, fair enough. So, if they know why I'm stopping them, then we have a very cordial conversation. Say they're speeding. Well, and they say they go, well, I just got a phone call. My friend's in the hospital and they're not sure of their health and what's going to happen. And that's when I just look at them and I go, well, if you get into an accident trying to get to them, you're not going to be able to help them, are you?
Yeah. It's not going to be a benefit.
And usually reality kicks in and they'll look at me and they'll go, yeah, you're right. Well, do me a favor. Please slow down.
Right.
And that's the end of the conversation. If they've got a valid reason, or what they think is a valid reason, even though it's breaking the law, that comes into that officer discretion.
Right.
It's not one of those things that, oh, well, you're running 36 and a 35. You're getting a ticket. No, we have discretion.
Sure. Well, I
And
can tell you this, and this is just from me, and like I said, in my younger days, and I was a patrolman and stuff, and I was out there working traffic, then yeah, I wrote some tickets here and there. I don't write tickets. Can't tell you the last time I wrote a traffic ticket. It's literally probably been years. I just don't like doing it. I think if I can stop you and I say, hey, you went through that stop sign back there, and just give you a heads up, we had 700 crashes in the city last year. You attributed to stop sign violations or whatever it may be. If you would care and just use a little bit more caution or whatever, and we could have a cordial understanding or whatever, and they say, you know what, you're right, sorry about that, whatever, and say, all right, not a problem, have a good day and be safe. Just because I don't like writing tickets, because I don't like getting tickets, right? It's just, that's kind of thing, is like, I don't, and I'll tell you another example is I don't like, and well, I'm gonna back up. I generally don't like wearing a seatbelt, and it's not because I don't think they work or whatever. It's because I got used to it at a younger age, so I have to remind myself to do so. So there are a lot of times when I'll stop somebody and they don't have their seatbelt on, I'll just remind them, just FYI, it may be a safe thing if you put your seatbelt on. But I've never written a seatbelt ticket in my career, ever, not one. Because I don't necessarily agree with the fact that something that kind of just involves them is something that I need to really find them about, if that makes sense. Now, it's not to say that I don't approve of them, because by all means, I think, they do save lives, and I would prefer that everybody wear them, and I harp at, my family all the time, put your seatbelt on, whatever. But me personally, I don't write tickets for it, because just my opinion. And that's, once again, I'm sure that's, everybody's individual about that.
Yeah. And there's that thing that we're given is called discretion.
Yeah. Yep. And generally speaking, in the state of Ohio, discretion is going to be used all the way up to crimes against society that don't really necessarily have any standing damage or like any individual loss or damage. So, if somebody's disorderly, I can have discretion and say, no, you're not going to jail. Or, if they do this or do that or whatever, but if they punch somebody in the nose, then yeah, I don't have the right to discretion over that anymore.
Correct. And those are, I know in our laws, those are defined as shall be arrested.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So there's certain things that we can have discretion on and certain things that we can't, but that is defined by law in my state. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So just real fast, I just wanted to read this little article that came out about the Law Enforcement Education Act. And the reason I'm touching, I've seen this, I've seen this kind of go both ways, as far as people actually knowing that it's not a law, and some people think that it is. But there was an actual congressman that pitched this idea, this House bill, and the legislation would require uniformed federal officers policing First Amendment assemblies to wear plainly visible identification noting the officer's name and agency. Once again, a federal law that would require what kind of officers? Uniformed federal officers policing First Amendment assemblies to wear plainly visible identification noting the officer's name and agency. Plain and simple, that is absolutely just for federal officers in uniform. It says it right in the language. It's for federal officers wearing uniform, like Capitol Police or like Secret Service Police. Believe it or not, there's police agencies within almost every federal agency. So there's an FBI police. They work police department within the FBI that actually works policing on FBI-owned properties. And that's kind of what that's talking about. It's not saying that the federal agent that's out with his khakis and dress shoes on is going to be insisted to wear around a name tag, and he doesn't have to tell you who he is right there, unless there's something else in federal law that says so, or unless the FBI has a policy, or the DEA, or the, I hate to say ATF because I don't really think they're a real federal agency in my opinion. I think that's just, anyway. I'm just ranting. I'm just being silly, guys. But there's nothing unless there's policies within. There's not any standing federal law that I'm aware of that actually says you have to go out and identify yourself. Because, first of all, that would be careless and reckless. Based on totality, to think that you just have to go out there and like broadcast to everybody who you are, that's reckless.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, to think that, that anybody in the course of, like Kick said earlier, in the course of a riot, it's just going to go up and say, hey, I want your name and badge number. No, not you. The guy over there in the khakis that's got the blue jacket on that says FBI. And he's probably going, dude, now's not the time. You know what I mean? Seriously. It's common sense. That's a lot of times what we lack, at least in my opinion.
Well, there's another piece to it, too. You also have to take into account that a lot of these agents are working undercover. They're plainclothes officers. And for them to identify themselves not only puts them as an individual at risk, but any case that they're working is now at risk in that locale. So the expectation then is, oh, well, nobody needs to be private. Well, I don't run around screaming my name at the top of my lungs in my driver's license everywhere I go.
See, I do. I go around and scream Kick all the time.
Yeah. If you want that for the cops, you better be prepared to have, something way worse for yourself, in my opinion.
Well, Kick, that reminds me, have you seen the commercial for, it's one of the agents or one of the companies that like monitors your credit, where they're like, people are in the commercial are distributing their personal information like social security number and date of birth and name and all that stuff. Have you ever seen that commercial?
I've seen quite a few.
I've seen some too, kind of like that.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's an older commercial, but that kind of reminds me of that, what you were just talking about. Going around and, screaming out your social security number with a megaphone.
Right.
It doesn't make sense.
Oh, that's right. I do remember that. They were on like some flatbed or something, and the person's got a megaphone, and they're yelling their social security number.
Yeah, he's got a sign on with a social security number on it or something like that, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah, it's dumb as
hell. One of them puts it up on is in Times Square, and it's up on one of the screens in Times Square.
You mean that's not a good idea? Yeah, I thought that would be a good idea. I don't understand. Yes, LifeLock. Abby, you're right. Yep. That's what that was. LifeLock.
Yeah, LifeLock commercial.
Yeah.
Y'all go ahead. Go ahead.
It's like going to the bathroom and wiping before you go to the bathroom. It just doesn't make good sense.
That makes me think of that commercial that was trying to get people to quit smoking, and it's like your day isn't going to be normal anymore, and the guy goes into the bathroom and sits on top of the toilet tank.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah. And commercials never cease to amaze me either, because it's like they're for the longest time they run out of ideas for how to make them clever, and then all of a sudden the Super Bowl comes around and reminds everybody that they still got some cleverness. It's like, wow. So, but nevertheless,
going back to the one thing I said earlier, when we talk about the expectation of identifying police, what people understand to a degree is that the police do have certain, let's say, benefits that they don't necessarily have to follow some of the traffic laws or some other items in the pursuit of completing their task to serve the public, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, in that sense, if you look at it and you say, okay, it's not a federal requirement that Blue Bear has to identify himself to me if I just walk up to him on the street, right? Unless it's his policy in his municipality. But if he asks me And that's part of the policy and the statutes and codes. I have to, right? So now take it a step further, okay? If you believe that all cops must identify themselves, like 3 forms of identification, guess how much more we as civilians are going to have to give? It sounds slippery slope, but each one of these types of examples always ends up taking away more rights of the civilian when you set this unreasonable onus on the police. You will get their identification. It'll either be on the ticket, it'll be on a report, it'll be on a business card, whatever it is that you're going to get from your interaction. But if you are solely going there to gain a reaction based off of the fact that they're not identifying themselves because you want to be an obstinate twat on the street,
kick using big words,
then you will get their name and badge number once they're done writing, your trespass notice, or when they're finished with the reports after they put you in jail because you won't leave.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you something else too, is a lot of times when a lot of this is written for is in the time of civil disrest. You're talking about something that's not just, me being out, on a traffic or on, possibly a domestic complaint or a theft or whatever, but specifically, let's just say some of these larger cities and stuff that have had these riots and bad things going on. Right. Excuse me. And I think that the thoughts of these guys to identify themselves when they're literally sitting there wearing helmets and shields, trying to keep peace and keep people from really getting hurt, is probably not the most practical time to have to stop to identify yourself. That's just kind of being silly. So I guess that just kind of is a more of a, I guess it's more of kind of a common sense thing. And I think we kind of allude back to that every time. It's like, if you have common sense, it's probably not going to be a big issue for you to understand this.
The picture is always bigger than the one they paint.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and that's why we talk so much about the word reasonableness. And I'm not an attorney by any means, and I try to understand, what reasonable would mean. Would be specifically, the average person off the street to think, is this a reasonable act? Am I being reasonable? If you're being reasonable, then there's no need to ever feel like that you're doing anything wrong. If you're being unreasonable, then you're probably doing something wrong. So if you keep a level head and you actually, show respect and you're supposed to, you're probably not going to find yourself in any trouble anyway to have to throw a big fit after to identify some police officer, and that's just my opinion. So I just find it kind of interesting that how many times people think that there's so many demands on you have to do this. I will clarify one thing. In the state of Ohio, at least, in the state of Ohio, the ID is only requested when there's suspicion of breaking the law. So if they are if it's potentially that they've broke a law, or if they are potentially a suspect, or if they're potentially a witness of a felony or a crime, that's the only time when police are going to come up and demand your ID. So I don't know other states, I'm not going to pretend to, but that is the law in the state of Ohio. So, and I know we hear that a lot. Oh, we hear that a lot.
And one of the things that I was reading earlier came from Lawfare blog, which is written by a Harvard and a Yale group of students. Well, not students, but they've graduated with their JDs. And they said that the central question analyzing such officers' behavior, meaning identifying, would be whether or not it was reasonable. And they put that in quotes. Now, the Fourth Amendment precludes the government from conducting unreasonable searches and seizures, but as the Supreme Court noted in Mapp v. Ohio, there remains no fixed test for reasonableness. Instead,
individual courts, yes,
trial courts determine reasonableness using objective standards on a case-by-case basis.
Absolutely.
So there's your operative word, is objective.
Yes.
And that's where the limitation lies, is that when you're looking at a video of some clown that is just running about with a camera harassing cops and pretending that they're news media, they're not objective because their purpose is to promote themselves as a story, not just record. If they were there recording, their mouths would be shut and they wouldn't be doing anything stupid to rile up anybody in the public, be it like UPS, Walmart, or even officers or workers in the court. And that's where the reasonableness would come in on an individual and civilian level. We have to have reasonableness too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and I think that's why I like running, I tell my guys this, run everything through the filter of reasonable. Do you think, now, if you just take your uniform off, so to speak, and you run it through, who's being the unreasonable element in this? And if you catch yourself being unreasonable, then you better damn well take a quick inventory of yourself and get yourself back together. Because if you catch yourself thinking that you're making too many decisions to try to restore order, that's not going to work. It's not going to work. You have to maintain reasonableness. And if you look at a situation and you say, okay, this guy's being completely unreasonable the way he's acting. He's expecting, his neighbor to act this way and act that way, or yada, yada, yada. So he's probably the problem. And I think that's why, when the Supreme Court ruling that basically left it in the hands of the courts themselves to make the decision of what reasonable is, because it allows for a greater freedom. Would you say that's fair, Kick? I mean, really, ultimately, is that not an example of freedom to allow your more specific courts to define reasonable in a case-by-case basis? That's exactly what that's all about.
I believe that identifies an opportunity for us to maintain a level of freedoms.
Yes.
If the federal government is defining reasonableness for us, we have then lost the opportunity to express ourselves and have that objectivity. And thereby we've handed off more of our rights, especially, now with all of these people who are claiming that they're champions of 1A, they're, if anything, doing more damage to those rights. And unfortunately, they want the federal government to define these things for us. Because, well, the Supreme Court is the supreme law of the land, and so everybody's got to follow that. Well, when you look at it from that standpoint, we no longer live in a democratic republic. We're back to a form of not necessarily a monarchy, but we edge on dictatorship. And that's not the country that we live in. So
Sure.
If you're relying on the Supreme Court that deeply, you're not for a democratic republic.
Right.
And
And
we want those people to tell you how to live.
And we've seen this in the past too, multiple times. The Supreme Court has had something kind of laid in their lap and they've referred it back to the states like they're supposed to do. When they step back and they say, no, we're not going to rule on this. This is a state issue. Because if they do, then it's precedent, that it's done. And they know that this is a state by state basis. And this is something that I probably shouldn't be sticking my nose in. And I'll tell you an example, and you guys may or may not agree. And I spoke of Ferguson, Missouri earlier. But if you recall, when Ferguson, Missouri happened and that police officer shot that guy out there, and there was a big uproar, and that was during the Obama administration. I'm not trying to get into politics, but I remember Eric Holder was, he was the head of the DOJ. He was our attorney general. And instead of it being left to Missouri, which is what it should have been, completely a Missouri issue at that point, he was sticking his nose in it from Washington. And so was the Obama administration. I'm thinking myself, why are you chiming in on this yet when Missouri hasn't even determined what anything's going on? You have no reason to believe that there's any federal law that's been violated here, including a violation of civil rights yet. You don't even know there's criminal anything. So for you to chime in from Washington, you're sticking your nose in state matters, and that should not be. And if I was the attorney general of the state of Missouri during that time, I would have thrown and I would have been like, first of all, you need to stay out of it until we're done, or until we figure out what the totality of this is. But that's neither here nor there. But Kick, I was want to ask you something. I'm curious. When we hear about the Supremacy Clause, and I don't know how much experience you have, but you referred to Supremacy the United States Supreme Court. How would you break down the Supremacy Clause in your opinion? Like, because there's a lot of weird assumptions, I think, from a lot of people that like to talk about what the significance of the Supremacy Clause is, and how the federal government is the ultimate rule of the land when it comes to law or whatever. But then there's a lot of back and forth type stuff that you see a lot of times too, where people are kind of met, or at least I guess kind of appear to have kind of a misunderstanding of how that works. So I'm just kind of curious. And Blue, if you've got an opinion on it, I'd be anxious to hear as well.
I went over the Supremacy Clause with a dear friend who passed not last year, but the year prior. He was a clerk for a judge and an attorney. And we covered that along with Fourth Amendment in one of my study streams while I was finishing my bachelor's degree. And the short of it is, it basically says that, yeah, the Constitution can take precedent over state laws and state constitutions because, and this is where we're going to summarize for people who can actually look at it from a larger perspective, those laws have to be defined based on constitutionality of the Supreme Court. That does not mean that the Supreme Court can say whether or not that law can go into effect unless that law is challenged up to the Supreme Court level.
Right.
Now, what it does is it prohibits states from interfering with the federal government's exercise of its constitutional powers and from assuming any functions that are exclusively entrusted to the federal government. So that's where our separation from states' rights and federal function, right? So let's say, for instance, the state of Kentucky wants to try and perform a task similar to that, let's say, Congress would do, then the Fed would say, hey, whoa, Kentucky, what the hell are you doing? You're stepping over our toes. This is unconstitutional. You can't do that. But what it does not do is allow the federal government to review or veto state laws before they take effect. So that's the thing, right? You want to, and I say you as a broad term for these people who challenge the laws about them being unconstitutional when they haven't even come out yet. They have not in practice taken away anybody's rights. It is only in practice that we can have an objective view of how the rights are being infringed. And that is when it can be taken up to the Supreme Court.
And that's what I was going to say and that's when we determine what the supreme law of the land will be. When it's a challenge between the state or one state to another, or one state to the federal government. And that's when the Supreme Court comes in that says, okay, no, I'm going to side with, Kentucky here, because Kentucky says this, and this, and this is not a violation of any federal law. And this is not a violation of constitutional rights. So bam, and now we've got precedents. We got a Supreme Court ruling that does happen. Let me ask you this. I absolutely believe 100% that there are some agencies at the federal level that I don't agree with, and the ATF is a big one. But something that Kick, you're a little better with the statutory elements of stuff and understanding that than I do in practice. It puzzles me at times how the ATF can run off on their own and determine what is illegal when it comes to firearms. And I'm using that because that's kind of in my wheelhouse. But does it not seem kind of asinine to think that they can just basically say, oh, by the way, now this is illegal without anything further from a court or anything? Is that, am I looking too much into that, or is that, I'm just curious what your take is on that?
I believe that it's an overreach, in my opinion. I don't really care much for the way that there's this willy-nilly approach by the ATF and the Fed to make these rules, go back to the whole bump stock thing. Some guy who didn't even use one is now the cause for a knee-jerk reaction, and that's where I see a problem. From a federal level, we don't see as much objectivity. We see more of appeasement, and that appeasement goes to whomever is in power at that time.
Would the term knee jerk reaction fit? Probably.
Yeah. So, yeah, I disagree with how they can just blanket make those statements and then the states have to go against it. That just seems like an overreach from a Supreme Court ruling standpoint and from a Second Amendment stance. Because I too, I have weapons.
Sure.
I don't want to come home and find out that, oh, my 25 round magazine for my 22 LR Smith and Wesson rifle is now illegal.
Right.
Just
right.
because somebody at the executive or the congressional level got their fifis hurt.
Mm-hmm. Well, there was something that just came out, and Tom was talking about on the Hall Pass, where he was talking about the difference in something that the ATF had sent out some letter, or whatever, saying this is now illegal because they've basically created the definitions. So what really bugs me is this: if we don't have a judicial ruling on it, how is an executive branch been able to write their own definitions? They're literally giving legal opinions. I mean, in my opinion, and I'm, like I said, I'm no attorney, so please, guys in the chat, don't beat up old Counselor Goo here, okay? But so it seems like they're making a lot of Blue. Would it be fair to say that it seems like they're making a legal opinion like you would get from an attorney general at times, like what legal, what is not legal? Does that make sense?
I think they are overstepping their authority because, one, we did not vote them into their position. I think it needs to be cleared through Congress because Congress makes laws. And if they want that to be a legal definition, it needs to be approved by the people that we vote into office.
I'm surprised that there hasn't been more challenges to some, like all the way up to the Supreme Court on some of these some not laws, but some of their ideals for weapons and stuff. It hasn't been challenged that far. I don't know whether the NRA is just sitting on their hands or I don't know.
I don't know, but they need to do something because it's getting ridiculous.
Well, there was actually a video. I wish Tom was still here because I'd have him put the link in there. He shared a video the other day that was hilarious. It was a cartoon video, and it was about the ATF, and they were given their definitions, and they had pictures up, and they had one picture of like an AR-15, and it says, "Is a rifle. This is legal." Blah 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 blah. And then it was the same picture. The guy didn't change the picture, and he says, is a whatever he called it, he called it something else. This is any other weapon because it does this and this and this. This will cost the tax stamp and all stuff. I'm going, wow. I mean, just crazy. I know, Kelly, you're right. I know, and honestly, I'm literally being the exact way that a lot of the frauditors are, in my opinion. I'm doing it myself right now about the ATF because I should be, instead of sitting here behind a computer screen, I should probably be calling my local elected officials and be saying, hey, what are we doing about this? And that's why we need to be at the polls. It's why we need to be active with our local elected officials, because eventually somebody's going to win this struggle. Sometimes the quietest is the one that actually takes the second place, because you just sit back quiet and peaceful, and that's not always a solution.
I try to steer clear of political discussion and maintain a level of neutrality as best as I can, because most people get pretty deep into their beliefs, and I choose not to define myself by that stuff. I'd rather take a look at everything and hear things from different sides. But you're right. Get out and vote. I don't care who you vote for. I don't care what you vote for, right? But get out and vote. That is your civic duty. If you complain that, your guy isn't winning, then why should you vote? Well, you've now taken away one more vote that could help. That's all it is. People want a simple answer. They want a simple solution, but the activity is asking too much.
Right.
You know? And that's where you see things in a lot of this. The 1A community, they want things to be simpler than they are, and they're not. You see this with sovereign citizens making up their own narrative about how the law functions and how the federal government works, how what they file is going to be smarter than any attorney, right? As if they were, more intelligent than people who actually study law legitimately. And then you've got other people who just choose to push scientific fact out of the way. It's all in the chase for a simple answer.
Sure.
And that's unfortunate that people have to be like that. It really is.
Well, guys, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I've got to get out of here because I have that work thing to go do.
Yeah, my lunchtime's about up as well.
I'm actually getting ready to wrap it up. I told myself I was going to go for an hour and just get this out there real fast. But if either one of you have a last word for the chat while you're here real fast, by all means, Blue, you got anything to say?
Well, if you've not checked out my channel, go check it out. I will put a link in the side chat, Blue Bear One, and make sure you subscribe to these two guys as well. Leducator and Kick, great content, great people. So,
thank you.
Well, I definitely appreciate that.
Make sure you check us all out, and I'll see you on the flip side.
All right, brother.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for coming up, Blue.
Be well.
Kick, if you got anything, sir, feel free.
Sure. Got some new stuff that I'm going to be coming up with. I think I might be going live a little bit later this afternoon. Apparently,
Awesome.
Afroman Audit's dad was making some very salacious statements and possibly threatening statements about his use of 2A and the police.
Oh, Lord.
So I may be reviewing that this evening, along with a few other things that I'm not going to bother your chat with. But if anybody in the chat has been following along with the chat, you kind of already know what it is. So,
do you have a tentative time, Kick, that we can expect that, or
probably around 6 Central, 6:30 Central, maybe 7. It just depends, kids, dinner, that type of thing.
Sure, absolutely. All right, guys. Well, make sure you check out Kick. He'll be his topics are always on the top of my list anyway. Usually, as a matter of fact, a lot of times there's certain creators that I'll get an idea or I'll see something I want to cover, and then I go over there and sure enough, Kick or Skeptic or Irish has got it already covered. I'm going, dang it, man! Can't you give the poor little fat guy cop a chance? So, but by all means, make sure you check out Keeping It Criminal. I promise you, Kick is one of my mentors in this game, and I don't know what I'm doing, so I just kind of follow his lead. So
I'm just some guy,
but I definitely appreciate it as always, and you're always welcome here. And if you haven't checked out his channel, make sure you do it. Keeping It Criminal. If somebody, one of my mods, will put in the chat just in case they put a link, that would be awesome. But by all means, man, I'm sure I'll be over in your chat when you go live, buddy.
Yeah, sounds good, man. And you know what? I may address that one question from Nope Wasn't Me before I go, which
Sure.
I'll address it again later tonight. It's already been explained. If you didn't pull the shit out of your ears to hear it while I was being talked over by an old man who smoked too much pot and got angry about other people when he has no credibility to begin with, then you probably should go back and try to listen for the facts and not listen for what you want to hear. It opens your mind to new possibilities. So, do yourself a favor and stop following shitty people. That's the best thing I could tell you.
All right, buddy. Well, we will check you out later on, and like I said, I'm sure I'll be in your chat when you're live. So you have a good day, and wish the family well from us.
Absolutely. Happy New Year to yours, and hope you all stay well. Have a great day, sir.
Same to you, sir. So anyway, guys, I just wanted to kind of touch base on that, and I kind of told myself I was only going to go for an hour because I want to hang out with my beautiful wife today. But Basically, the gist of it is this: local law enforcement, unless there is a local law pertaining directly to that department or that agency or policy or something, there's no federal law governing local law enforcement to identify themselves when required. It's just not there. And generally speaking, when even that federal law that Chili was trying to quote the other day is referring, generally speaking, to uniformed federal law enforcement officers basically displaying their ID and badge. I don't think there's even any language in it. And I will give the quick disclaimer: I have not read the entire bill or the entire law or whatever, but I do know that it was basically referring to the uniformed officer ID and badge on, and that's all I really know of. So I'm not even sure that the federal agency in plain clothes would even have to. Not that I'm aware of, but I know that most local agencies don't have that unless it's an individual policy. So the next time you see a video where there's some frauditor or some jerk on there saying, "Hey, give me your name, badge number, give me your name, badge number, give me your name, badge number," and the police officer just walks off, you can probably just assume that have to, by his state or county law or city ordinance, or maybe even by his policy. It's very likely that he just doesn't have to. So keep that in mind. Treat somebody with respect. Sometimes it's the best way to be able to get the solution to a problem. Be respectful, be polite to people. Sometimes the way that we talk to people will make a difference in the outcome. So treat everybody kindly, treat everybody with respect. Make sure you check out Keeping It Criminal. Check out all of our community. We got some great people in our community. Irish Demon, if you Team Skeptic, you've got Keeping It Criminal. You've got, and don't forget our guys that are always with us either. Derek at Bits and Pieces. I think he's been working on some content, and he's kind of going a different way, doing some different stuff. I think he's kind of got tired of the whole Chili thing, like a lot of us have. And I think he's kind of going a different way. So give him some love. I think, you have to open yourself content in order to be able to maybe experience something new, maybe find something else you like. So, as far as the training goes, I'm going to talk to you guys. I have been lifting a little bit, and I have started to do a little bit of different stuff to try to get myself back in shape. And there is a rumor that a little short baby man might be coming to my area again, to Huntington, West Virginia. So let's just see how that goes for him. So you guys have a blessed, wonderful day. Mrs. Legicator, do you want to say anything to anybody?
Happy Thursday.
She says happy Thursday, AKA she got her Scentsy and she's happy. Everybody be blessed. Have a wonderful day. Love on each other. Do something nice. Pat somebody on the back. Open a door for somebody. Say a kind word. Be blessed. Be driven. Be focused. And as always, train like you fight, fight like you train. We'll see you guys next time.